live on Facebook as well. Welcome, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, to your final City Connections program. This has been, it seems like everybody I've spoken to, it's been a long year. There's been a lot going on. Things are, of course, busy around the holiday time of year. But I want to ask you to look back on your tenure as mayor for the city of Grand Rapids. Did anything stand out for you? I mean, there's so much. Any key things that really will stick in your mind? And positive, of course, as well.
Of course, positive. Thank you. You know, it's interesting. So I'm in my 9th year as mayor. So this is because we moved to an even year election. I'm in my second term was a 5-year term. I call it my bonus year.
Your bonus year, yes.
And so, you know, if I look back over the trajectory of the 9 years, so much has happened in our community. You know, there are a whole host of things I'm proud of. Policy-wise, you know, we move forward, encouraging and setting up corridor improvement districts here in neighborhoods. You're seeing some incredible revitalization in our neighborhoods. We were able to pass a parks millage and invested significant funds into upgrading our parks, especially our neighborhood parks and pools and playgrounds. If you look at downtown, we've had a huge renaissance. I mean, I think back to 9 years ago when I became mayor, and you know, Corwell wasn't on North Monroe, the MSU Innovation Center wasn't there, Perigo wasn't there, the Warner Building wasn't there, Studio Park wasn't there, Arena Place wasn't there, the venue. I mean, the list goes on and on.
That's really remarkable. The skyline has changed that much.
The skyline has changed, and it continues to change. So I'm proud that we've been able to move forward on a couple big issues for me. You know, the connection of the trails along the river restoration will be hopefully in the river next year with construction of the lower reach. Obviously, the amphitheater is going up. The soccer stadium will break ground soon. But we're also seeing really significant revitalization in neighborhoods as well. You have Factory Yards going on Godfrey. You have a lot going on in Boston Square. Plainfield has, you know, several new multi-apartment complexes. There's a new one right here on Bridge Street. So there's been a lot of growth. You know, some people have talked to me and they're like, well, growth for growth's sake alone isn't important. But I would argue that, you know, a growing city is an indication that we're a city where people want to be. You know, people want to be here and open businesses here and raise their families here. With that, though, comes challenges, obviously, with housing and, you know, other struggles that we've had, whether it's around police and community relations or around the need for housing and low-income housing and homelessness. So we continue to work on those things. But I'd say, looking back on the last 9 years, a lot of positive. On the flip side, I think going into my second term, I was so excited, did my State of the City speech, thought, okay, I have one term under my belt. My next term, I'm really going to focus on these things. And then literally a month later, COVID hit, and the world turned upside down.
Yes, indeed. And there was a lot of unrest. We had the George Floyd situation. We had a lot of civil unrest in a lot of cities here in Grand Rapids as well. But we seem to have learned from that, grown from that, and the police department and several of the departments making positive change. What do you think we've learned from that time period?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You know, we had a different chief, so Chief Payne from the George Floyd murder to, you know, when we had the critical incident with Patrick Leoya's death, we had a change at the police department. So Chief Payne retired, Chief Winstrom came in, and I think when Chief Winstrom came in, it was very clear that a priority of the community and the commission was to focus on building community relations, really building up our Office of Public Oversight and Accountability, looking at things we could do differently. So since Chief Winstrom came in, we now have the mental health co-response team. We now have Cure Violence. We're doing that in partnership with the Urban League. We're doing youth programming, the Youth Explorers program. And so I think under Chief Winstrom's leadership, he has really jumped in and recognized that there's a lot of healing that needs to be done in our community, but also just a lot of relationships that need to be rebuilt, and has a focus on doing that.
Mayor Rosalynn Bliss is with us here on the City Connection program. On this Monday, December 2nd, we are live again, and we will welcome your questions later on in the program. We'll also be joined by Mayor-elect David LaGrand. As Mayor Bliss, you are in your final month of leadership, winding things down. You've got some official city functions. Let's talk about the handoff and how that will go.
Yeah, so I do. So just people keep asking me. So I'm mayor until December 31st. That's charter driven. So I have 2 more commission meetings, actually tomorrow and then on the 17th. And then on the 17th at 7 o'clock at night, we'll do the oath of office for the new mayor as well as the commissioners. So we have 2 brand new commissioners, and then Commissioner Asasi was reelected. So they'll all get sworn in during the oath of office. And then, you know, the big thing that I've actually already started doing this with David is meeting regularly, talking about, okay, here's where we are in current projects, here's things you're gonna have to continue, what are your priorities, what can I help you with? And then also, I remember when I was first mayor and I had the privilege to have some time with Mayor Hartwell before he was done as mayor, but it's hard to grasp the scope and the challenges of the office until you sit in that chair. So part of it will be, for David, a huge learning curve, even though he's been in public service for a long time. You know, he has a set of priorities, but then he also will start serving on a whole host of boards and commissions and chairing the city commission and meeting with our, Metro 6 mayors and going to Lansing and building relationships with mayors from throughout the state of Michigan. Already in January, he'll be traveling to DC for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Mayor's Innovation Project. I think sometimes people don't see all the things that the mayor is involved with, because a lot of the work I've done and David will do is not just in the city, but it's regional, it's statewide, and it's at the national level. So he'll have a lot to learn and to kind of wrap his head around, but I have great confidence he's going to do a fantastic job.
Not only that, learning the people that he will work with on a regular basis, a lot of people to get to know, the processes you said. You spent many years on the city commission as a second ward commissioner. Talk about the process for the new incoming commissioners as well. Yeah,
so we have a real formal onboarding process at the city and orientation where the new commissioners, and including David, meets with department heads. They, get a briefing on the budget, policy, strategic plan, master plan. So that started literally the day after the election. We had a city commission retreat, which was about a 5-hour retreat where we talked about where are we we laid out all our goals, where are we with those goals, what are some of the priorities ahead. So that's already taken place. Michigan Municipal League, they have a training for newly elected officials, local officials. So hopefully the new commissioners will take advantage of that. At the mayor level, Harvard does a great program for new mayors, so David will be attending that. It's well worth your time to go and meet other mayors, but also kind of learn from some of the best. And so it's a pretty steep onboarding and learning process. I've told all the new commissioners, including David, you got to get out there and tour your fire stations, the police department, the training facilities, the wastewater treatment facility, the Lake Michigan filtration plant. Go and get to know all of the city services, but also see where our employees are working out of. So some of it is just taking the time to meet with people and learn.
Yeah, a lot of people to get to know, a lot of projects to get to understand and understand the scope of as well, including the proposed 3 Towers project, which has been a hot topic of discussion lately. A lot of people have provided feedback both for the project, both with some concern about the project and maybe some people against the project. To what extent does the city consider these comments when looking at the long-term planning and the scope of this 3 Towers project?
Yeah, so it's actually on our agenda tomorrow. It's a unique project and it's a unique incentive because we have your traditional obsolete property rehabilitation incentives, you have the brownfield incentive, and this is a unique one because it's a transformational brownfield incentive, and there's additional requirements. So those incentives, the transformational brownfield, has to be for truly transformational projects that are over $100 million, that are mixed use, that are going to redevelop a blighted or dilapidated or underutilized location in cities. So this transformational brownfield really was set up to support large-scale projects like this. And so, I've talked to a whole host of folks about this project. The incentive itself is a significant incentive, but part of that is because the project itself is such a huge project. It's the largest project downtown in my memory. And so we've been talking to the team. They've been listening to feedback. They've been meeting with residents. So they've been meeting with a whole host of residents who live downtown, who live in the downtown neighborhood, who will live close by the project. And so we'll continue to listen to people and then have the discussion tomorrow. And I anticipate at Cal we'll cast a vote and see if that moves forward. And then ultimately, the transformational brownfield incentive, it's a performance-based incentive. So if the development doesn't happen, the incentive never materializes. But it's largely a statewide incentive. So once it goes through a city process, it has to go to the state still, to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, to the Michigan Strategic Fund for ultimate approval. And so that will happen, if it moves forward tomorrow, that will happen sometime next year.
All right, that will be tackled at your meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow, yeah.
All right, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss with us on City Connection here on GRTV. We'll also hopefully get to, in just a little bit later in the program, the Bridge to Our Future Community Master Plan and an update on where that is. That's something that Mayor-elect LaGrand will be dealing with as well. And as we come up to a break here, we want to let you know you are listening to City Connection. Mayor-elect LaGrand will join us here in just a moment. Stay with us here on GRTV.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
And welcome back to City Connection here on GRTV. Once again, I'm Phil Tower in for Allison Donahue, host of this program. I wanted to remind you, we were just speaking with Mayor Bliss. Tomorrow is the City Commission's Tuesday night meeting, and they are expected to consider the approval, as we mentioned earlier in our first segment, the Bridge to Our Future Community Master Plan. That's been a topic of discussion on this program before. Mayor Bliss, we're joined by Mayor-elect David LaGrand, and this is a perfect opportunity for you to tackle what the commission will be talking about tomorrow night, and then how that handoff will work with Mayor-elect David LaGrand.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm glad to have future Mayor LaGrand here with us. So the Community Master Plan, we have been working on that for about 2 years, and we've had a robust community engagement process led by our planning department, and we brought in some national consultants who they were coupled with some local consultants. And we have been working through the update of the master plan, which I always remind folks, it's a land use plan used by our planning commission to make decisions when proposals come before them for approval. And so it's a blueprint for land use. I think sometimes people think it's a master plan and everything goes into it, but we have lots of other plans, but this one is specific to land use. So we've been working on it. We've been going through each chapter. The Planning Commission reviews each chapter of the master plan, and then they ultimately made a recommendation to us, to the full City Commission, for approval of the plan. We reviewed that at our last meeting. We had a public hearing at the City Commission for that plan, actually received a lot of positive feedback from the community and from individuals who were engaged in that process. And then it'll be up for consideration and approval tomorrow. I anticipate that it'll move forward tomorrow. If not, we'll bring it back on the 17th if we think that there's still some work we need to do. Hopefully by the end of this year, that plan will be approved. And then it goes to the next mayor and commission to take a look at what is in the master plan and what in our zoning code needs to change in order to align with the new master plan. So early next year, the next mayor and commission will take on the heavy lift of going through and updating our zoning code, which is will probably be about a 12 to 18 month process. It's a very robust, in-depth process because the zoning code is law. And so the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, those are both quasi-judicial bodies. And so what they decide is a decision that if somebody disagrees with it, it has to go through a legal appeal process.
So there could yet tomorrow night be some final tweaks or changes to the community master plan, and that could even be pushed into 2025.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have the master plan approved no later than the 17th and get it done. This commission has been actively involved in the master plan, so I think there is some value in having it finalized with this sitting body, and then for the next commission to take that and figure out how to operationalize it. And that's really what it is. The zoning code is how you operationalize the master plan. Yeah.
You seen the plan?
Good summary. Yeah, and I've actually been to some of the meetings, and so it's. I mean, we can quibble about words. It's maybe not a blueprint so much as it's an overview, right? It's a statement of principles and themes and sort of broad goals. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a contractor, so when I look at a blueprint, it's like, well, if it says there's supposed to be a 2x4 there better be a 2x4 there.
True, it's not that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's great because it does let us. History moves on, and some things seem like good ideas a long time ago, and you think like, why is that still there? Or some things maybe were never a good idea, but they got into zoning and planning processes, and so I think it's going to be an opportunity to do two things. One is really use that community input and implement, and I think that Mayor Bliss is absolutely right. Like the commission that's done the work should be the ones to get it to the finish line, but that might not be true if it wasn't that Mayor Bliss has done she is spending an absurd and embarrassing, wonderful amount of time onboarding me, getting me up to speed on all this stuff. We are meeting all the time right now.
She mentioned that.
I've never had a
He's
job.
getting tired of me.
I've never had a job where I've had so much support getting ready for the job. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
But it's also true that I'm spending time with the new incoming city commissioners, so that they're comfortable with it, and they're comfortable with our working dynamics, and so bringing all of those folks into the conversation. You don't have to be voting right now, but they are going to have to live with the results. And so that balance only makes sense if the incoming people are really communicating with the outgoing people, and it's absolutely happening. As a matter of fact, last week, I think I got kicked out of Mayor Bliss's office because she had to meet with the new First Ward Commissioner who's coming to have lunch with her. So those conversations are happening all the time, and that's great. Now, it's also true that the people who are coming on just went through an election cycle, and the nice thing about an election cycle is it really makes you get out in the community. I mean, it's the one argument for maybe having 2-year terms, not 4-year terms. You got to go knock a lot of doors. You got to have a lot of conversations, and it stops you being lazy. I mean, there's a voice in the back of all of our heads that would rather sleep in the morning, maybe watch TV at night, not have to read public policy, or not have to engage. But we just have to. There's no substitute for keeping listening to people in the community, and so that's an ongoing thing. It'll have to keep ongoing. The other part of this is that there is this growing body of conversation about, do we have to have decision points, as many decision points as we do, because the more things we make a decision point where a planning commission has to say yes or no, or a zoning has to say yes or no, the more you're potentially building in waiting periods and problems with timeline. And so one of the drums that I'm going to be banging a lot in the new administration is time is money. If we want affordable housing, and everybody in this community wants affordable housing. Well, affordable housing is a byproduct partly of how expensive it is to build something in the first place, and that is partly a byproduct of how long does it take to build things. So this is an opportunity to maybe not just say, yes, the master plan says do this, but also to say, can we streamline this process? Can we make it more user-friendly? Because there's a big difference between accessibility for the sophisticated person who can hire a law firm to help them do their development, and the little person who wants to build a duplex next door so they can have some rental income, or wants to put the ADU in their backyard and get that online as a source of income for them. So barriers to entry are really important things to talk about, and that's one of the, if we can make zoning and planning more accessible and more clean and more understandable for people, we got a great opportunity, because we all know two things. A, we want housing to be more affordable. B, we're in the beautiful position that a lot of people want to live here. We're a desirable place to be, and that means we need more space. And so this is really a pivotal part of that conversation.
Beautiful position, but a huge challenge when you get into the affordability of the space.
Yep.
The community master plan may or may not, I would assume it's addressing green space issues, which is something a lot of cities struggle with. We seem to have that somewhat under control here. However, we've got these uniquely different and wonderfully vibrant neighborhood pockets of places. Boston Square, you mentioned Plainfield and the Cheshire area. Will they have the opportunity within this community master plan to keep their own unique characteristics? A lot of people will say, well, we don't need another strip mall. This is what we need. Talk about that, if you both would, in terms of this plan, which is not done yet.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about this plan is that it includes 3 area-specific plans. So in addition to the master plan, which is kind of the overall vision for the city, we actually have a number of more targeted, what we call area-specific plans. So downtown has one, it's called GR Forward, and it basically looks at just the downtown district. And it says, what do we want to see in what places? So what David was referring to is, how do we move things away from being a special land use or having to go before the planning commission and just allow it by right? And so in the GR Forward plan, it's very clear we want high density. We don't have height restrictions. You can go as high as you want. We removed minimums and maximums to make it easier to try to get infill.
AKA get government out of the way.
That's ultimately what it is. Yeah. But through the area-specific plan, so in the current master plan we're considering, actually Creston and Cheshire, we have an area-specific plan for that area that will be included in the master plan. Southtown also has one. And that's a more, I would say it's more granular, drilled down plan for that neighborhood. that takes into account certain corridors, what that neighborhood wants to see in those corridors. And we have other area-specific plans. We have one here on the west side. We have one in Midtown. So you'll see those in the neighborhoods.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to layer on that, the other thing to remember is almost everything in this space, we're talking about private actors doing things, and so government facilitating at best. So when you're worried about the character of a neighborhood, a lot of that happens by choice. Like, I live in Heritage Hill because I like old houses. That's why we moved in there. We could have we could literally talk the rest of this show about different grain characteristics in oak.
Yes, we could.
I make furniture. I'm a huge wood snob, which means I'm immensely proud of the floorboards in my house. But I don't live in Heritage Hill because I hate Ottawa Hills, but there are reasons, there are great reasons to live in Ottawa Hills. There are great reasons to live in Cheshire Village. And so maybe you're the kind of guy or woman who really, really loves to be close to a park. Well, that's going to give you a different vibe, but that vibe's going to be self-perpetuating by the people who choose to live and make their homes in those neighborhoods, right? So there is cultural inertia that the city's got nothing to do with. So yes, the city should lean into and facilitate, but we shouldn't mandate if it can ever be avoided, right? And so the nice thing about cities is, I don't know if it was Jane Jacobs or somebody else who said, cities are basically just collections of neighborhoods. So a city is a bunch of neighborhoods, and if you understand it that way, and if you think that everyone has the right to live in a cool, funky neighborhood that they value, they can all be funky in lots of different interesting ways, which is one of the reasons, if I can segue, to my hopes for the new soccer stadium. What I've been saying about this is everybody gets that Wrigleyville in Chicago is cool. I don't want to live in Wrigleyville, though, because I don't want to live around a bunch of sports bars and people up till all hours.
Not a lot of quiet time in Wrigleyville.
But a lot of people like it, right?
Yeah.
So if our soccer stadium were to kick off a Soccerville, that'd be great. I don't want to live there, but like maybe my kids would. Maybe they like sports.
Exactly.
bars. So.
We're going to head to a break here. We want to remind you, whether it's about that potential Wrigleyville or Soccerville or anything else related to the community master plan, you'll have an opportunity to speak with Mayor-elect LaGrand and Mayor Rosalynn Bliss right here on City Connection here on GRTV. Stick around. We have more coming up in just a moment. welcome back to the December 2024 edition of City Connection. In fact, we're live on this Monday, December 2nd. Happy belated Thanksgiving weekend to you. This is Phil Tower sitting in for your regular host of City Connection, Allison Donahue, who has this month's off. In this segment, we're joined once again by Mayor Rosalynn Bliss and Mayor-elect David LaGrand to answer questions you, our viewers, have about everything related to the city of Grand Rapids. Questions you'd like to ask either Mayor Bliss or Mayor-elect LaGrand, and you can submit them again to cityconnection@grcmc.org or comment on the live stream on Facebook or on YouTube. So we are here in studio on this first Monday in December, the final month for Mayor Bliss, and counting down to when Mayor LaGrand and the new city commissioners, I believe you said, Mayor Bliss, the 17th is when that all happens, when everybody's sworn in.
Yep, 7 p.m. in the commission chambers. We'll be swearing in David as well as the other commissioners, and that's open to the public, so anyone who wants to attend, they're welcome to.
Excellent. I'm going to direct this to Mayor-elect LaGrand, and you can both talk about this. Heath asked, Mayor-elect LaGrand, will you make sure the city manager is someone who will that would be the new incoming city manager, will prioritize affordable housing? Easy for me to say.
Sure. So the first answer is I hope that our new city manager is our current city manager. Mark Washington has not announced that he's leaving, and I think this is something that he cares about a lot, and he's focused on a lot, and he's worked with Mayor Bliss on. So I think that's the good, easy answer. The other answer is yes, it's true that the city manager ultimately is accountable to the commission, and so citizens should be making sure that the commission is really focused on and insist that we are focused on affordable housing, and we are. I know that one of the reasons I keep getting Mayor Bliss to promise that she's going to stick around and help me on this is that she is years into some of the conversations in this space, and there's been a lot of talk and maybe not as much action as we could have dreamed for up to this point, but now it's time to really start doing some things, and there's some transformative possibilities on the horizon that we're both really excited about.
I'm going to ask both of you a tough question I've never heard anybody address. In affordable housing is discussed on multiple platforms, live television, in printed newspapers, everywhere.
Yep.
What is affordable housing? Has anybody decided, have any city said, this is what affordable housing looks like in Portland or in Memphis? Well, I mean, that's a challenge, but should it not be answered at some level?
Well, do you mean, I guess, first question I would have is, do you mean, is that an income question you're asking, or are you asking a design question? If it's an income question, we have lots of metrics on that. So,
right. Yeah, we have, technically we look at area median income. And ultimately, we don't want people to spend more than 30% of their income on housing. So that's the gold star. And what that means is it's different based on the income that people are making. And we know that, there's very clear federal guidelines for individuals who fall within federal guidelines for being considered low income. And if you fall within those federal guidelines, there's a whole host of potential tools or resources that we can provide, from housing vouchers to low-income housing projects, low-income housing tax credits, which are very competitive. Affordable housing is a little bit more challenging because if you fall above that low-income housing threshold based on area median income, there's fewer tools available. And I think this is where it gets into what type of housing, accessibility. Is it housing where you don't need access to a vehicle? Is it a walkable neighborhood? Is it just a smaller unit? Is it a duplex so that you can have secondary income from the unit next to you? And that's why I think it's more challenging, because there's not one easy answer.
Sure. Well, and as Mayor-elect LaGrand, you said, it's a developer question as well, too. Do you want me to build someplace that you're not going to reliably have standing 10 years from now, or have serious problems because you have affordability? And if it is a certain number, as you said, Mayor Bliss, what kind of neighborhood am I going to be in? What kind of affordable, in terms of walkable, do I need a garage? Do I not need a garage? A lot of components, but again, it gets down to how do you match those two?
Absolutely. And saying what does affordable housing look like is sort of like asking what does a human being look like? And the answer is there's lots of variations and lots of right answers to that question.
Good answer.
And ultimately, what I've always said, I think David agrees with. We want to be a city where you have mixed income, mixed housing types in every single neighborhood. You don't want a concentration of poverty. You don't want a concentration of affluence. So you want smaller houses, smaller apartments, studio apartments, all the way up to 3-4 bedrooms. Now, I'm from a family of 10, but we grew up in a 4-bedroom house because I shared a bedroom with my 2 sisters, right? So every family even looks different. Whether you're at a stage in your life like I am where you live alone, I can live in a much smaller space than someone that has maybe 2 young children or 3 young children. So again, how do we make sure that you have different housing types in every neighborhood? So if I want to live on the west side and send my children to Harrison Park, I can choose to do that and find a house that works for me and my family. And I think that is the ultimate goal.
And another layer of complexity on this that we don't often think about. So when I talk about disabilities, one of the things I say is we're all often momentarily disabled, and also we're all going to eventually fit the criteria of disabled if we're lucky. Eventually we're going to get to the point where we need mobility help. And so building a world that's better for people with disabilities turns out to be better for all of us. Maybe not today, but it sure is going to be at some points in our lives. So similarly, like one of the things I love about Heritage Hill is it passes one of these rough tests is, can you live there as a renter? Yep, lots of rentable houses in Heritage Hill, lots of rental units, different sizes and shapes. Can you live there as a homeowner? Yep, I do. Can you live there when you downsize out of your home and you want to move into something smaller? Yep, we've got condos up the street that are they're an older population. So you can live your whole life in Heritage Hill and not lose your community, but move into different kinds of housing and never leave that neighborhood.
Even accessible housing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the,
and that's a great point. I mean, you know this better than most.
Yeah, so
accessibility.
So that's one of the tests of a really healthy community is, do I lose my right to be a member of that community because, I don't, so there's some neighborhoods that do better than others. But if you've got a neighborhood where everything is, say, cookie cutter 4-bedroom house, well, Rosalynn doesn't need that right now. I don't need that right now. I needed it when I had 4 kids at home. But our lives change. We are different people at different stages in our life.
Yeah.
So,
question from Tabitha here on City Connection. What is the city planning to do to address concerns over air pollution in Roosevelt Park?
I'll start on this
Go
one.
ahead.
So this has been, there are actually different neighborhoods in our city where we know that we have poor air quality, especially depending on the day. We have a number of our older neighborhoods that have industrial use right up next to residential use. So there's a couple things. One, in Roosevelt Park specifically, and some neighbors came out and spoke at our last meeting, but we've also been having these conversations with residents over in Roosevelt Park for years, is how do we get some of the truck traffic off of Cesar Chavez. So that is something we're actively working on. It used to be a trunk line. We had to work with the state to get it switched over to make it not a trunk line. So that's one thing, is how do you reduce those higher polluting vehicles like trucks? But also we know for air quality, you need more trees, that there are some things that you can do around climate resilience. So we have to, especially right now as we are facing the climate crisis that we have to continue to invest in those green infrastructure projects. The work that we're doing at Plaza Roosevelt, where we're building a new park, that's right on Cesar Chavez. We are making investments in the park itself, Roosevelt Park. All of those things we have to continue to do.
And I only will scratch the surface here, but I am a huge electric vehicle geek, and I do not, for those of you out there in TV land, think that they need to be subsidized. They are simply better technology, and over time they're going to win.
Yeah.
And they're going to win in the truck space just as thoroughly. Amazon doesn't deliver with fossil fuel anymore. All the Amazon delivery trucks you see around town are electric because it's better. I don't use fossil fuel anymore. My family doesn't use fossil fuel anymore for mobility. Right, I still have a furnace in my house, but I haven't used gasoline for years. That technology is just going to win over time, and as it does, tailpipe emissions just going to go away. So the more we can facilitate and make it easier, not just for people in a home, but for renters to actually get into the EV future, it's going to be good for everybody. It's going to be good for air quality. It's probably the single biggest thing we can do for urban air quality is probably get rid of tailpipes.
So primarily these complaints about air quality are coming coming from vehicular traffic, not from an industrial entity in that neighborhood per se.
Well, the difficult thing is that you do have along the corridor there a number of industrial uses and manufacturers, and there's historically been a lot of truck traffic in that neighborhood. We've tried to push them off, keep them on the highway, but even that neighborhood is adjacent to a major highway as well. So
Understandably.
it is challenging, and that's why these investments, and I'm with David. One thing I've known David for, my goodness,
Long
over
time.
20 some years. And one thing I really appreciate about him, and I'm really glad he's going to be our next mayor, is because he is so strong in the area around environmental sustainability and doing real work to address climate change. You know, I think Mayor Hartwell started that work when he was mayor. I was able
With
to,
us.
with us, that's
were on
right,
the
because we
commission,
served on the city
and
commission together.
I'm going to jump into this real quickly and say, you have a real challenge. You have a lot of deniers in this community, and
Yeah.
maybe fewer than we used to have.
Sure.
And we've got 2 minutes until our break, but I'd like to hear your plan on that. And this is kind of getting into your priorities coming into office that Wayne is asking.
Sure.
I think it's important you address this. I'm glad to hear your zeal and enthusiasm for climate issues, for EVs, but I have a lot of friends who said, see, I told you so. They're not selling because we're not ready for them. First of all, on the climate deniers, how do you plan to address those people? Because a lot of time they're developers.
Sure. The answer to that, frankly, every single time for me is you can be a climate denier, and I don't have to have that argument with you. You're probably not a math denier. Like almost everybody in our community
Good
can
answer.
agree that 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I can tell you, and it would bore your audience, but I promise you, the electric car, my EV that I just finished driving, and I'm going to give to my daughter, cheapest, way cheaper to operate than any fossil fuel car I've ever owned. Like I tended to own used fossil fuel cars. The brand new EV I bought cost me way less over its life cycle per mile than any fossil fuel car I've ever owned. Similarly, like I don't have to sell you on climate change to tell you that we should be doing massive investments in solar. The reason we should invest in solar is because we will make money. That's why we should invest in solar. Greed. Like solar is actually mature technology that will make the city money.
All right, we're going to keep that there and come back to more of your questions here on City Connection. Again, City Connection at grcmc.org, where you can comment on the live stream. We'll be right back.
It's morning in Grand Rapids. Do you know what's going on in your city? Stay informed about what's happening in your community with The Rapidian, your source for hyperlocal news and information. The Rapidian is a community-focused news source powered by local residents like you. Our volunteer writers and reporters create content that hits close to home about topics like local government, business, schools, events, and people. The Rapidian goes beyond the headlines to provide in-depth coverage of issues that affect Grand Rapids directly, so you can stay in the know. We aim to uplift the community by sharing positive, inspiring stories of growth, progress, and neighborhood pride. The Rapidian is your neighborhood newspaper for the digital age. Follow us on our website and social media to stay connected to your community. This is The Rapidian.
And City Connection. Again, I'm Phil Tower, in for Allison Donahue. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we are live, if you're watching, on Monday, December 2nd, here on GRTV, and of course on social media, on YouTube and on Facebook. More questions, and we're going to pick up right now. We're in studio with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss and Mayor-elect David LaGrand. And I'm going to jump right into Wayne's question, which we talked about the passion for sustainable energy, being climate forward. More onto your priorities for your first term in office.
Sure. So my priority for my first term in office are the same as my priorities for my second term in office, if I get one. So I'm sort of thinking an 8-year scope here. First is justice and policing. First, it is a necessary precondition for cities to work, that people feel safe, but it's also true that people have to feel that that justice is being delivered by the government in a way that makes sense in every community. And so that means doing some reforms. That's an area I spent most of my life in. I'm sort of a subject matter expert on criminal justice issues, and so that's something I'm really primed to have conversations about. We got a great police chief and a great force in town, so having that conversation that's a community conversation ultimately about justice and policing is really important. Second is, we've touched on it already, and that is housing, affordable housing. Lots of complexity in that space. It is a continent-wide problem, so we have to look at other places and see how they're doing. But it ranges from, we need to be a zero-tent community. We need to have the moral courage to devote the resources so that nobody is freezing to death on a street in our cities in the winters.
Are you an advocate for more small homes?
Absolutely. So that's second. But this complex field, we could spend 5 hours talking about it. We could spend the week talking about it.
Next program.
Next big lift is neighborhood development infrastructure stuff. And so that covers a few issues. One is things like pedestrian prioritization, making the city more walkable, safer for people, because public safety includes not getting killed by cars. But also then making neighborhoods funky and fun, which is something I've done a lot in my life, and so focusing neighborhood by neighborhood on those kinds of things. And then finally, real investment in renewable energy, because it insulates us from price shocks, it insulates us from brownouts, and I'm convinced it's a sound investment of people's money. So those are the three big things. Now, overarching all those three things, I want to at least take a second to say it. It's really important that we figure out how to do democracy better in Grand Rapids, because I hope that if we can figure out how to do democracy in a more participatory manner than we have in the past, we will legitimize government, but we can also be an example for other communities. So the city's done we've made real leaps and bounds on this in Rosalynn and my terms in the city, like very good at community engagement. But I intend to sort of do a leap on this, and I'm going to institute something I've been calling Mayor's Mondays. Every Monday night, we are going to be having a town hall in a part of the city. So if it's the first Monday of the month, you'll know that it's going to be in the first ward. If it's the second Monday of the month, you'll know it's going to be the second. The third will be in the third, and we'll be talking about those big basket issues. But then finally, we'll talk about clean government, good government initiatives, because we have to keep reinvesting in making people feel like they own the government, because the people own it. And if they don't feel like they own it, democracy dies. And that is a big problem in America right now, the ongoing legitimization of democracy. And so I don't want to leave that off the table, and we're going to do rolling town halls. They're coming to your neighborhood soon. We're working on the details right now, and we're going to make that happen.
And a lot of those disconnected citizens, Mayor-elect LaGrand, would tell you they're disconnected because they never felt heard.
Right. And for better or for worse, city commission is not a great format for being heard, because you go in and there's a 3-minute shot clock and there's no format for discussion.
Yes.
And that's not a fault of the city commission meetings, because they are supposed to be about doing city business,
Exactly.
but it is not a conversation. And so the point of a Mayor's Monday is anybody can come, but we're going to be talking, in May, we'll talk about justice and policing. If you want to talk about housing, wait till June. We will talk about housing in June. We will talk about neighborhood development in July, and then we'll go back to justice, and we'll go back to housing, and we'll go back to neighborhood investment, because those conversations are never going to be done. I mean, it's funny, Mayor Bliss and I are so much the same person. Her last State of the City, she kept talking. I was like, man, it's exactly what I want to say. We got to get out of the completion mindset and into the improvement mindset. We're not going to solve our housing issues. We need to do better on housing. We're not going to solve justice issues. We need to do better on justice issues. We're not going to solve making neighborhoods perfect. There is no perfect, and human history moves on, and today's great idea is going to be yesterday's or tomorrow's, that wasn't so great. And we're going to be, to do that, to build a culture that really works that way, it's going to be a little messier, and we're going to have to show our work, and we're going to have to be willing to say, well, that didn't work, which is another nasty word for that is a mistake. You're going to have to be willing to make mistakes in public.
And you're going to have to be transparent. And Manny,
Yes.
one of our viewers, has a question for Mayor-elect LaGrand. Manny said, you mentioned transparency quite a lot in your campaign. Whenever a major incident happens with the Grand Rapids Police in Grand Rapids, Manny is saying it seems that transparency goes out the window in order to protect the police as much as possible. What does transparency look like to you in terms of criminal justice reform here in Grand Rapids, Mayor-elect LaGrand?
Okay, so that's a great question, and I really appreciate it. The one thing I will say, and I really want to give Chief Winstrom props here, watch the next time something happens in Grand Rapids. He is stunningly good at transparency. So there was a shooting in my neighborhood. 3 hours after that shooting, it was an officer-involved shooting. 3 hours after that shooting happened, he rolled all the body cam footage, and he went point by point, and he showed this happened, then this happened. This is when the guy pulled a knife and rushed the officers. This is what they did in response. And at the end of his briefing, he said, "Now you all know what we know. There's going to have to be a state police investigation. The prosecutor's going to have to look into it. But you, the citizens, now know what GRPD knows." So, yes, there's a history in North America of not enough disclosure around criminal justice things. But our new police chief is doing a great job on leading with transparency, time after time and after time. So, not to say that we can't do better, not to say that he's not willing to have conversations about how to do better, but it is really important when we talk about criminal justice that we actually do crack the lid, talk about those cases where things didn't go well, examine them, be able to look backwards, and be honest about it. Because we all deserve a society in a city where we feel safe, but we all also deserve to live in a city where everyone is treated fairly and equally, and that's critical.
And I'll just add one thing.
Sure.
My hope too, and David is already aware of this work, is that people also learn more about our Office of Public Oversight and Accountability. It's a few years old, but it is another opportunity for people when they feel like there's not transparency after an incident, like call the city and talk to Brandon Davis. Mm-hmm. We have a whole process now to engage community and to respond when there are issues in public safety. That office was set up to be a public oversight and accountability of public safety, police and fire. And so continuing to learn more, get engaged with that office. They're doing a lot of great work in the community and in the neighborhood around Know Your Rights. They're working with Cure Violence. They're working with the Urban League. But get engaged and reach out to them if you feel like there's something amiss.
Yeah, and I might say you have an exceptional person in that position.
They do.
In Brandon Davis.
Yeah.
Real quickly, and I want to get to Hillary's question.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I can talk about this for the rest of the day.
Okay.
Like, this is my
Next
life's
program.
work. So
You've got a year, at least a year plus of these programs.
Yeah.
Hillary is asking for Mayor Bliss and Mayor-elect LaGrand. It's unlikely for cities to get help from the federal government in regard to climate change over the next 4 years. Without federal dollars, what meaningful progress can the city of Grand Rapids make to save our planet?
Okay, so here's the big, bold idea. Solar is a mature technology. You can actually get reasonable returns on solar even in cloudy West Michigan now. If the city were to make real investments in solar power, it turns out it's got benefits because it stops us having, it insulates us from price increases potentially, it insulates us from rolling brownouts, and if it's a smart investment, then the city can make investments in those, and we don't need free money, right? We don't need to be like, oh, if only the feds would rain money on us, then we could do something. If it's a smart investment, sustainability can be sustainable, to put it simply. And so I'm excited to have that conversation. I am convinced that we can make the math work on real investment in renewable energy, and that is one of the things that we can do. Now, another one is I'm convinced that we can have profitable fast DC charging stations for electric vehicles, which will facilitate in adoption of EVs. One of the reasons people don't adopt them, use them, is because they're worried there aren't enough charging stations around. That's a great place for government to intercede, to facilitate. So lots to be done in that space, but we don't have to lose money at it, so we don't have to be subsidized.
Yeah.
All right.
And I would just add, there's
Real quickly.
Yep, there's good. We've started some of that work. The solar array at the Lake Michigan filtration plant, there's a return on investment in that. The biodigester, where we're taking waste and turning it into renewable natural gas, there's a return on investment. I think we need to continue to build on that.
Right, and people need to know we're not burning money here. We're making rational investments of the voters' money in things that we think are rational investments. They're not, we're not doing things out of principle that don't make fiscal sense.
Yeah.
And if you have questions on that, check in with Mayor-elect LaGrand on a Mayor's Monday night. And that's going to wrap up our program for this Monday in December 2nd. I want to thank our guests, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, as well as Mayor-elect David LaGrand. Thank you to both of them for joining us on City Connection and for taking the time to answer your questions. You can watch rebroadcast of this episode of City Connection throughout the month of December. My apologies for seeing my mug for the rest of the month. It'll be on Comcast Channel 25 Livewire or here on GRTV's YouTube page. We look forward to seeing you in 2025 in Grand Rapids. That's our program. Thank you so much for tuning in.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, The Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection. where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events. From concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen, as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show, or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.